Imagine this for a second. You're driving to work. It's a completely normal Tuesday. The radio is playing, and suddenly your car makes a noise.
Oh, no.
Right. And not just like a little rattle. I mean, a deep grinding noise that just sounds incredibly expensive.
That is the worst sound in the world.
It really is. So you manage to get it to the shop, and an hour later, the mechanic hits you with a $3,200 repair bill.
Ouch.
Yeah. Now, you actually have the cash sitting in your savings account. But if you drain that account right now to get your car back on the road, you're putting your rent money at risk if literally anything else goes sideways this month.
It's that horrible feeling of being exposed.
Exactly. Or picture a totally different scenario. You've just launched a business. You need $15,000 for inventory to meet this sudden spike in demand, but your revenue from previous sales isn't going to hit your bank account for another 90 days.
Right, the classic cash flow trap.
Yeah, so you could drain your personal savings to flip the business, but then that leaves your family completely vulnerable.
Both of those scenarios are incredibly stressful.
Right.
And, they represent exactly the kind of financial crossroads most of us find ourselves at eventually.
Right.
You have a pressing need, you have some resources available, but deploying those resources feels dangerously risky because it just strips away your safety net.
Okay, let's unpack this because that tension is exactly what we're getting into today. Welcome to today's deep dive. We're exploring a strategic financial concept called credit stacking.
It's a game changer.
It really is. And we're basing our conversation today on a highly detailed guide written by Troy Johnston. He's the founder of a platform called StackEasy.ai, and his guide is titled Credit Stacking 101, How to Use Credit Cards to Build Wealth.
Which sounds like a contradiction to a lot of people.
It does. But our mission today is to figure out how people transition from feeling trapped by those unexpected expenses, like the car or the inventory, to navigating them with total flexibility and, confidence.
And before we get too far into the weeds here, I think it's crucial to frame what this deep dive is not about.
Good point.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is not a conversation about hoarding credit cards for the thrill of it. It's not about recklessly chasing random approvals just to see how much plastic you can acquire.
Yeah, no ego metrics here.
Exactly. And it's absolutely not about finding free money. What Johnston is outlining here is the process of building a highly intentional, structured financial toolkit.
The overarching goal being to increase your options and significantly lower the cost of borrowing when you actually need it.
Precisely.
In the text, Johnson makes this really bold statement that kind of sets the tone for everything else. He says that while most people think wealth is built strictly through income, just working harder, earning more experienced builders know that wealth actually grows when capital is used efficiently.
That's the core philosophy right there.
So how does the guide actually define credit stacking in a practical sense?
At its most basic level, the text defines credit stacking as the strategic process of opening and managing multiple lines of credit, both personal and business, in a very deliberate sequence.
Deliberate being the key word.
Right. You aren't just applying for a card because you got a glossy mailer offering a shiny piece of metal.
We've all gotten those in the mail.
Oh, constantly. But here, you're building a sequence to increase your total available capital and create financial flexibility. You build it slowly so that you can deploy it instantly the moment an opportunity or an emergency shows up at your door.
I'm glad you brought up the deliberate nature of this because we really need to distinguish this from a trend a lot of people might have seen on the internet, which is churning.
Oh, yeah. Churning is everywhere.
It is. But the author draws a really hard line between the two.
What's fascinating here is the mindset shift between those two concepts. Churning is essentially a transactional hack.
Right. It's short term.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's when people open a card just to hit a one-time sign-up bonus, maybe 100,000 airline miles or a quick cash bonus, and then they immediately close the account or toss the card in a drawer.
So if churning is like drinking an energy drink for a quick shush rush, stacking is like meal prepping for the week?
That is a perfect analogy. Stacking is foundational. You're building a permanent, long-term infrastructure that you intend to keep and utilize over years.
And the stakes for having that infrastructure in place are incredibly real. The author shares a pretty painful personal anecdote from back in 2019 to illustrate this opportunity cost.
Yeah, the story hurts to read.
It does. He had this killer deal lined up for inventory for one of his e-commerce brands. The profit margins were absolutely perfect,
Well,
but his liquid cash was locked up in another investment for 6 weeks. He just didn't have the credit infrastructure in place to act fast enough to buy the inventory on credit.
so what happened?
He literally had to sit there completely paralyzed and watch his competitors swoop in and scoop up the inventory that should have been his.
Man, it is a perfect, albeit painful example of the cost of not being prepared.
Yeah.
He had the industry knowledge, he found the lucrative deal, but he lacked the liquid capital or the credit equivalent to execute on it. That's a hard lesson to learn, but it really highlights why having access to capital before you need it is so critical.
Now, if I'm listening to this and I don't own an e-commerce business, I might be tempted to think this doesn't apply to me.
Sure.
But the source material is very clear. This methodology is for everyone. Let's look at how this strategy applies across the board, starting with just everyday personal finance for someone earning a standard salary.
For an everyday employee, credit stacking is heavily focused on preserving your cash during emergencies. Exactly like that car repair we talked about at the top of the deep dive.
Right.
If you can put a $3,000 repair on a 0% interest card and pay it off over 12 months, your savings account stays intact.
You aren't stressed about making rent.
Exactly.
Right.
But beyond emergencies, it's also about everyday optimization.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me. The text breaks down the math on everyday spending, and it is honestly eye-opening.
Walk us through it.
Let's say you spend $4,000 a month. That's covering your groceries, your gas, dining out, paying your utility bills.
Standard budget?
Yeah. If you're just using a basic 1% catch-all debit or credit card, you are leaving an enormous amount of value on the table. By using a strategically stacked set of cards tailored to those specific spending categories, the text notes you could put more than $1,500 a year back in your pocket
That's real money.
for spending you're already doing anyway.
Right. And that $1,500 is just the reward side of the equation. On the personal path, stacking also gives you access to those 0% introductory APR offers we mentioned.
Which are huge.
Huge. So if you're between jobs or you get hit with a sudden medical bill, you can bridge that gap without paying exorbitant interest rates that compound and trap you in debt.
Yeah. Now, if we shift and look at the business side, the applications become even more robust. It allows founders to strictly separate personal and business finances.
Which, if you've ever tried to untangle at tax time, you know is an absolute accounting nightmare if you don't do it from day one.
Oh, I've been there. It is not fun.
But the guide also mentioned something about smoothing out lumpy revenue for businesses.
Yeah, what does that actually mean in practice?
Lumpy revenue is just a term for a business that experiences seasons of feast and famine. Think of a landscaping company that makes a fortune in the spring and summer, but struggles in the winter.
Okay, makes sense.
Strategic credit stacking gives that business owner working capital to make payroll or buy equipment during the slow months without having to give up equity in their company to an investor. They smooth out the cash flow using credit and then pay it down during the busy season.
If I'm a real estate investor listening to this, I'm probably wondering how this strategy scales for me compared to a small business owner. Does the author draw a distinction there?
Absolutely. For investors, the strategy pivots toward agility and protecting their borrowing power. It allows an investor to preserve their liquid cash for the massive down payments required for properties, while using credit lines to cover bridge costs, minor renovations, staging, things like that. But more importantly, using business credit keeps their personal credit utilization artificially low. So when they walk into a bank asking for a massive commercial loan or a new mortgage, their personal financial profile looks immaculate to the underwriter.
So whether you're trying to maximize grocery rewards, survive a slow season in your business, or fund a real estate empire, the underlying discipline is exactly the same.
It's universal.
But the guide makes it very clear that you can't just jump in and start blindly applying for things.
No.
The author outlines a progression, and before you do anything, there are 5 golden numbers the text insists you must know cold.
You have to know your baseline.
That makes sense in theory, but where do you even begin to measure that? Does the guide give a starting line?
It does, and this raises an important question for anyone listening. How well do you actually know your own financial profile? Because you can't optimize what you don't measure. The 5 numbers you need to lock down dictate your entire strategy. Number 1 is your credit score range. Number 2 is your utilization percentage. Number 3 is your total available credit across all lines.
Okay.
Number 4 is your structure and account maturity. And finally, number 5 is your timeline for growth.
Wait, before we move on to number 2 on that first point, The text specifies FICO 8 or Vantage Score 3.0. Is there a reason I can't just look at the free score my banking app gives me and call it a day?
That is a critical distinction. The score you see for free on many consumer apps is often a Vantage score. It's educational, and it gives you a good ballpark idea of your health.
But it's not the real deal.
Not usually.
Uh-huh.
The vast majority of top-tier lenders, around 90% of them, actually use a version of the FICO score, usually FICO 8, when deciding whether to approve you.
Wow, okay.
So if your Vantage score says you're at 750, but your FICO 8 is actually at 710, you might apply for a premium card and get denied, wasting a hard inquiry. You have to know the score the lender is actually looking at.
That is a huge trap to avoid. Okay, so moving to the second number, utilization percentage. The target range the text gives is between 1 and 10%.
Right.
Then we have total available credit, which is just adding up all your limits. For number 4, structure and account maturity, does that just mean how old my oldest credit card is?
Partially. It means the average age of all your accounts, which lenders look at to gauge your experience handling credit. But if you're on the business path, structure also refers to what kind of legal entity you have. Are you a sole proprietor, or have you set up an LLC?
Gotcha.
And then for number 5, the timeline, it's about realistic expectations. Are you trying to make a major financial move in 30 days, or are you mapping out a 6-month plan?
Assuming someone has those 5 numbers mapped out, the guide stresses that the next phase is purely about optimization. You do not expand or apply for anything new until the foundation is rock solid.
Never build on a weak foundation.
Right. Let's walk through the math on this because the source gives a really clear example of how to optimize what you already have.
Oh.
Let's say you currently have 3 credit cards in your wallet. Their combined limit is $15,000. Between the 3 of them, you're carrying balances that total $6,000.
So that means your credit utilization is at 40%.
Exactly. The text says, before you even think about applying for a new card, your single goal is to bring that balance down below $1,500.
The reason for that specific number is that $1,500 is exactly 10% of your $15,000 limit.
That's sub 10% sweet spot.
Yes, getting into that sub 10% sweet spot fundamentally changes how lenders view you. When you're under 10%, they see you as incredibly low risk. You have access to credit, but you aren't desperate to use it.
Right.
If you apply for a new card while sitting at 40% utilization, the algorithms see you as potentially overextended. You might get denied entirely, or worse, you'll get approved for a tiny, useless limit like $500.
Which doesn't help anyone.
Exactly. But if you apply at 8% utilization, the doors fly open for premium limits.
Tracking that utilization down to the exact percentage across multiple cards sounds exhausting to do manually. Does the guide suggest any way to automate that process? I would lose my mind logging into 3 different banking apps every single day.
The author totally acknowledges how tedious that is.
Yeah.
The guide actually points to credit optimization tools like Dovely, which can help monitor your profile, track those utilization metrics in real time, and even dispute errors on your report independently.
Oh, that's incredibly helpful.
It is. The core takeaway is that you need a mechanism to verify your utilization is consistently under 10% before you move forward.
Okay, so someone has utilized a tool, they've paid down their balances, and their foundation is optimized. I'm guessing they shouldn't just run out and apply for a new premium card today. Where does the author say they should actually start their expansion?
This is where you have to choose your path and align your credit strategy with your actual life goals. Form follows function.
Makes sense.
If your goal is personal financial strength, your structure is all about strategic card selection. You want cards that offer maximum cash back on your highest spending categories, and you want long, 0% introductory APR windows to act as your emergency fund.
And if they're on the business path?
If your path is business building, your focus shifts to creating the right legal entity. You need that formal structure like an LLC so you can apply for business credit cards.
Right.
The massive benefit here is that business credit cards generally do not report your balances to the personal credit bureaus.
Really?
Yes. This means you can carry a balance for inventory, and it won't impact your personal credit score at all.
Wait, you mentioned debt-to-income ratio earlier for investors. How does that business separation protect an investor's debt-to-income ratio?
Debt to income, or DTI, is a simple calculation of how much you owe every month versus how much you earn. When an investor applies for a mortgage, the bank looks closely at DTI.
Right. It's a huge factor.
Yeah. Because business credit cards don't usually appear on personal credit reports, The debt held on those business cards isn't factored into the investor's personal DTI.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they could have $50,000 in renovation costs sitting on a business card, and their personal DTI still looks flawless to the mortgage lender.
So what does this all mean? It means you don't build the stack and then figure out what to do with it. You decide what you want to achieve, and you build the stack to serve that specific goal.
Exactly. Start with the end in mind.
The author stresses that applying randomly for cash when you feel like you need it is a terrible reactive strategy. Instead, the pro move is to map out your applications 6 months in advance. You time them with your business cycles and your credit profile optimization.
Because every single time you apply for a new line of credit, you're essentially spending a piece of your credit reputation. You want to make sure you're getting the absolute maximum return on that application.
The author gives an example of someone layering a Chase Ink card with an Amex. Walk me through how the math on that actually compounds, because it sounded almost too good to be true when I read it in the guide.
It's a brilliant example of the strategy in action. Imagine you've optimized your foundation. Your utilization is down to 8%. Your FICO score is sitting strong at 760.
The perfect setup.
Right. Because you're perfectly positioned, you apply for and get the Chase Ink Business Unlimited card. Because your profile is pristine, they give you a $20,000 limit with 12 months of 0% APR.
That alone is significant. $20,000 of flexible capital at zero cost for a full year.
But the strategy doesn't stop there.
Exactly.
You map this out. You wait 2 months. Your score stabilizes from the inquiry. Your utilization is still incredibly low. Then you add an Amex Blue Business Plus card to the stack. Because your available credit is now even higher thanks to the Chase card, Amex sees you as even more trustworthy. They approve you for a $50,000 limit, earning double points on everything up to $50,000.
That's why.
In the span of a couple of months, by being intentional and sequential, you have just accessed $70,000 in highly flexible capital.
Let's pause on the hard inquiry thing, because this is where people start to sweat. We are trained from birth to guard our credit score with our lives. Seeing it drop 10 points after an application is going to give a lot of people a mild panic attack. How does the author justify taking that hit?
It's entirely normal to fear the hard inquiry. And it's true, a hard inquiry does cause a temporary dip in your credit score, usually about 5 to 10 points.
Yeah.
But here's the critical mechanical secret the author wants you to understand. When you get approved for that new card with a high limit, your total available credit goes way up. If your spending habits remain exactly the same, your overall utilization percentage instantly plummets because you have a much larger pool of available credit.
Ah, I see. And because utilization makes up such a massive portion of how your score is calculated, around 30% of your total score, right?
Exactly, 30%.
That drop in utilization heavily outweighs the tiny penalty from the inquiry.
Precisely. You take a tiny temporary hit of maybe 5 points, but a month later, the massive increase in available credit boosts your score by 15 or 20 points.
So it's taking one calculated step back to take 3 giant leaps forward.
Yes, but the text makes it emphatically clear. This is not an overnight trick. Building a proper, resilient stack takes anywhere from 6 to 18 months.
Why does it take that long? If someone has a great score, why can't they just apply for 4 cards in one weekend?
Because of a metric called credit velocity.
Velocity.
Yeah, lenders monitor how fast you're seeking new credit. If you apply for 4 cards in a weekend, the algorithms assume you're in severe financial distress and are desperately seeking cash.
Oh, that makes sense.
They will deny you, even with a perfect score. You have to space out your applications, usually by a few months, to show a pattern of responsible, methodical growth. You let the strategy compound slowly.
Which brings us to a really practical, everyday hurdle. Once you've spaced this out, and you suddenly have 5, 6, or 7 cards in your wallet, things get complicated very quickly. I'm just picturing George Costanza's exploding wallet from Seinfeld.
Yes, the massive brick of receipts and plastic.
Exactly. You have different billing cycles, different promotional expiration dates, varying utilization ratios across different banks. It sounds like pure chaos.
And that chaos is actually the exact reason the author built the StackEasy platform to begin with. He was trying to manage 15-plus credit cards for his businesses using static spreadsheets.
No, what a nightmare.
When you're dealing with that many variables across that many logins, making a mistake, like missing the deadline on a 0% promo and suddenly getting hit with retroactive interest, becomes incredibly expensive.
Yeah, that would wipe out the benefits immediately.
The text argues that systems are what separate professionals from amateurs. Relying on your memory is a recipe for catastrophic failure when complexity increases.
What's the actual limit for a normal human? I can't imagine anyone successfully managing 15 cards while also trying to live their life.
The source states that the sweet spot for most people to maximize value without losing their minds is managing a stack of about 5 to 8 cards.
Okay, that's more reasonable.
Beyond that, unless you have a massive enterprise, you're generally just creating unnecessary work and risk for yourself. If you're just starting out, the pro tip is to begin with just 2 or 3 cards from different issuers. Say, one from Chase, one from Amex, and one from Capital One.
Why different issuers?
That spreads your credit inquiries across the different credit bureaus, which minimizes the impact on your score while still maximizing your available capital.
But even with just 3 to 5 cards, professional management is mandatory. The guide says you have to track your total available credit constantly, monitor the utilization across every single account, and know exactly when those promotional APRs expire. Right. A system isn't optional. It's the only way to reduce friction. And the text gives a highly relatable micro-level example to bring this home. Think about a standard $200 grocery run.
Right. If you just grab whatever card happens to be at the front of your wallet, and it's a basic 1% cashback card, you earn $2 for that trip.
But if your system, whether it's an app or a highly disciplined habit, tells you to use your strategically selected 6% grocery card, that exact same $200 run earns $12.
It seems small in the moment.
Right. $2 versus $12 might not sound life-changing on a single Tuesday, but multiply that $10 gap across every grocery run, every gas station fill-up, every utility bill across 52 weeks a year.
It adds up fast.
The gap between just having cards in your wallet and actually using a strategically stacked system equals thousands and thousands of dollars in lost value over time.
It all comes back to reducing friction. When you have a clear dashboard or a trusted system, you remove the guesswork. You don't stand at the register wondering which card to use. You just execute the plan.
Right.
And as the author notes, reducing friction directly reduces expensive mistakes.
We've covered a massive amount of ground today. We went from the visceral panic of a sudden car repair to the actual mechanics of building a $70,000 flexible capital stack.
Quite the journey.
We broke down why churning is a short-term sugar rush and stacking is long-term meal prep. We covered the 5 Goldie numbers you have to know, the absolute necessity of keeping utilization under 10%, and why relying on your memory instead of a management system is a bad idea.
If we synthesize everything we've pulled from Troy Johnston's guide today, the ultimate lesson is profound. The real advantage of credit stacking isn't just about having more credit. It's not about flashing a heavy, premium metal card at a restaurant to look successful. It's about fundamentally changing your relationship with debt.
It's about control.
It is entirely about control. It's about having more control over your financial reality. And as the text so perfectly puts it, control compounds.
I love that.
When you meticulously control your utilization, you control your credit score. When you control your score, you control the premium offers the banks give you. When you control your capital, you control your ability to seize opportunities like that e-commerce inventory without hesitation.
Control compounds. I just love that phrasing. It takes this abstract, often terrifying idea of credit and turns it into a tangible, powerful tool. It shifts credit from being a trap that you fall into when things go wrong to a ladder that you build yourself when things are going right.
That is the perfect way to summarize the mindset shift required here.
And that brings us to the end of today's deep dive. But before you go, I want to leave you with a final provocative thought to mull over. We spent this time exploring the philosophy that wealth truly grows when capital is used efficiently. So look at your own financial life right now. How much of your own hard-earned liquid savings are you currently burning on everyday expenses? Groceries, bills, minor repairs, that a strategically stacked 0% APR card could be covering for the next 12 months?
Good question.
If you weren't burning your actual cash on daily survival, where else could that money be invested to work for you?
It's a question of opportunity cost. And once you start thinking in terms of opportunity cost, the way you view the plastic in your wallet will never be the same.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the mechanics of credit stacking. Go check your 5 numbers, optimize that utilization, and start building your long-term toolkit. We will see you on the next deep dive.